Welcome to the third episode of the new podcast from the Liquid Galaxy project community, the so-called GCiers Podcast, in honor to our youngest contributors. I'm JAMstack, collaborator of the R&D laboratories at the Scientific Park of Lleida, Spain, where the open source project has his main base. So let me introduce the team we have today. Hi, Andreu.
Hello, Jan.
How are you?
Not bad. A little bit cloudy, a little bit of rain today, but nice.
Today I replaced you a little bit in introducing the podcast, so I'm glad you let me do that.
Of course.
Hi, Emilie. How are you from Vancouver?
Hi, John. I'm doing well.
How's the coronavirus situation in Vancouver, in your city?
It's getting better after it got worse, so hopefully it will flatten.
And how has been the start of school? Has it been normal?
Oh yeah,
quote unquote.
It's normal in our circumstances today.
That's something quite good. So I would say I'm going to start with the script, and it's my turn, and I'm going to talk about technology and business. I think technology has played an important role in helping businesses get forward during this situation, and today I'm going to talk about this. So since the pandemic broke out, countless technological projects have emerged to combat coronavirus in the world of businesses. Citizens and companies have mobilized at all levels. The technological innovation sector has taken a leading role, and the pandemic has revealed its full importance. Today, we're going to talk about some examples of the technologies that have been or will be enhanced by COVID-19. The first one is 3D printing. 3D printing has grown in popularity in recent weeks. Dozens of small and large-scale industrial initiatives have used this technology to produce medical supplies. Furthermore, additive printing enables factories to customize product design, streamline production, and adapt to changing market needs. In addition, it avoids dependencies on external or international agents, since the entire production process takes place within the same organization. These attributes allow it to perfectly cope with the emergency situation.
Let me make some interruption here, Jan, if you don't care. Because the nice point is that we make some, I would say, discussion about this. Do you know, Emilie, about any kind of initiative in your area in Vancouver or in Canada about this doing 3D printing stuff for the pandemic situation?
Oh yeah, there's some communities here who have started 3D printing the face shield holders, and as well they've been 3D printing some special things to hold the N95s on so they don't clip so tight. So yeah.
Very nice. And you, Jan, are aware of the initiatives here in Lleida and in Catalonia in general, in Spain?
I'm not specifically aware of any of those, but I know some specific person that have 3D printers at home, and they have been collaborating and printing some of these medical supplies, which I think it's a very good initiative, and I would have done it if I had a 3D printer.
There are plenty. There has been plenty, not too much now, because we are not on the same situation that the very beginning. But one of the initiatives that I follow and was very significant was some people from the University of Lleida. There were plenty of more people in the world doing the same stuff, but in that case it was Carles Mateu, one friend of mine and a professor of the university, of the Polytechnical School. Then he was trying to develop that kind of I don't know the name exactly at this moment. What is the name of the breathing machines? The ventilators.
Ventilators.
Respirators.
No, it's ventilators. It's ventilators, I think.
So he was trying, and this is not as a simple of a 3D printing stuff. It's not a matter of 3D printing, because you have to design a full machine, and then there has to be several electronic parts and several mechanical parts, because this is something moving that moves the air and pumps the air inside the body of the person. And also the problem was that, I remember, because I talked with him, the problem was that this has to be a very specific machine that usually needs regulation, needs to get approved from the FDA in US and in Europe and Spain or other agency. And I mean, it's not simple. and it was a pretty hard work. I saw the machine he was doing. It was pretty complicated. Then, as you say, there was dozens and dozens of coronavirus warriors. I don't remember the name. They have plenty of different organizations doing that stuff. It was very nice. So sorry for interrupting. It was
just following what you said. I think SEAT in Catalonia, they just transformed. SEAT is an automobile business. They produce cars, and they just changed their production line to create these sort of ventilators, and they adapted themselves to this new sort of business, which overall it's still beneficial for them and beneficial for everyone.
This happens in all the world, and exactly in US was nothing else than General Electrics, one company that makes the bigger hardware you can imagine, like the wind turbines or very big transformers for anything. Very big machines, so they transform several of the industries just to make ventilators. It was a crazy time.
Yeah.
And there, I think I remember that also in the Tesla factories in Fremont, in California, they also do the same stuff for some time.
They uploaded a YouTube video doing that, showing that, and it was interesting.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So in the workplace, working from home has made a huge leap forward in a matter of weeks. In this super accelerated process, remote work platforms and streaming video conferencing, like the Meet we're using right now, have taken a center stage. Technologies that were already popular, but now have become massive. These types of platforms are also starting to be used in sectors that were more reluctant to date, such as education, as we saw in March and April, or medicine, with solutions to assist patients or detect symptoms remotely.
Let's call it Zooming. Let's call it Zooming. There was not a new verb that was installed in our lives. It was not under life or meetings that we were.
I mean, it wasn't. I didn't use Zoom that much. I used Meet a little bit more. But yeah, the point is that we were constantly doing video conferences. I think I socialized. That's maybe not a real fact, but I think I socialized a little bit more online than actually in real life, which is a little bit funny. But
and you, Emilie, in Vancouver, in your school or families, what matters? What do?
We usually use Zoom, right? So as Andrew said, we have the verb called Zooming. So all the teachers would be like, "Oh, we're now Zooming at 9:00. Please come to class," and stuff like that.
Yeah. It was a new verb that the pandemic has incorporated to our life. Nobody's saying skipping. Take a look at this. Skype is nobody uses Skype. There was Meet. There was other. Which ones do you use also? Because there were other tools. Do you remember
Microsoft Teams?
But Teams was something like a newcomer to the.
Yeah, it
was a late newcomer, and of course, people from the companies that are used to Microsoft stuff, they use Teams.
And there was another one, but I can't remember. I think it was
Discord.
Discord. Yeah, I mean, you could use Discord.
Discord is only used with the
for gaming
community.
Yeah, that's
hard to turn it more into clubs and general community, and I think we have one class that does run somewhat on Discord.
Yeah.
That's good. Discord is interesting.
We use another tool that was very good at the very beginning of the pandemic, because you remember Meet was not there. was something that it was a tool we have in Google. If you have access to I would say paid Google suite of tools, then not too much people buys this, and then they make a very clever approach, and then they make it for free on the regular Gmail, not paid accounts, and they're stuffing with plenty of different tools, like the background remover we are not using today, or that you can use for longer periods of time, and also you can have many more people on the conferences. I was going to say we use another tool. I think Jan, you use this with me. It is called Jitsi. Do you remember Jitsi? Do you use Jitsi, Emilie, there?
We don't use it for classes, but sometimes with my friends we use it because it's more privacy focused, I guess.
Yeah, it is, because it has not gone away. And I have to say something that has in common with us, Emilie and Jan. Jitsi is another open source tool, and he's next to Liquid Galaxy on the Google Summer of Code and Google GCI I mean, you can find Jitsi community on the Google open source programs. I know the people that do the development, and I have this is the funniest point. I have stickers of Jitsi on my collection of stickers because they are coming to the conference. Usually this year we are going to have a virtual conference next week. We are not going to meet. Last year we meet on München in Germany. It was the first time in 15 years we meet outside of US. But usually we go in October, around October, to the California Mountain View offices of Google. This year is a bad year. So let's continue the Zooming stuff, Jan.
Yeah. Other key technologies for the return to normality, either in the work environment or in public spaces, will be and are already being tools for controlling the temperature, the space capacity, or even the movement control. And I think it's good to focus or outstand one important initiative that Google and Apple did together, which it was the track system that tracked infections through with the help of the mobile phones. I think we talked about that last day, and it was a pretty interesting initiative.
So let's gonna
contact tracing.
This is contact tracing. So are you using any kind of application in Vancouver, in Canada, Emilie?
Yeah, we do have an app, but like I don't go out of the house at all, so I don't have it on. But the top doctors have recommended that everyone should install it just in case if they come in contact with people. So yeah.
Are you using the application in your iPhone, Jan?
Oh, I'm not. I think I don't have it, but if I'm not mistaken, it was sort of a setting, wasn't it? That already kept your data or something like that.
Let me explain. There are two sides on this. What Apple and Google did was a stack of software. It was a software stack. I would say it was something like a SDK that other developers can work on top of this SDK, and it was for privacy. There is a very nice story after this. So it was the very first time Google and Apple make a joint venture, a project together. So it has to come a pandemic for those two big companies work together. It was very nice. And then as the problem with this is the privacy, most of people has his doubts about if this is going to be private or my information is going to go away. They develop a technology that, first of all, is open source, so you can take a look at the code, and then it's something that like is a very low stack on the operating systems on their mobile operating systems, and iOS and Android. So then developers took these SDKs and they develop over this an application, and this has to be made in I would say in a region-like fashion, because the point is that this information has to be aggregated and sent to someone that does the decisions on the area, and this is usually are the health major, whatever kind of public administration or whatever kind of group is behind of this. So they make the stack, and then usually the countries or the regions develop the application, and then they release the application to the main public. So also regarding the privacy was very nice, because what they do was they use the Bluetooth stack, and then what those application is just knowing that you have been near other phone for how many time and at what distance. Because the most important thing about the coronavirus is if you are near a person that has the coronavirus, if you are near for 30 seconds just saying something like hello, how are you, you're not going to get the coronavirus. You have to be in a short distance and for a long period of time. The long period of time means something like 15 minutes. So, and also the distance has to be this 1 meter, 2 meters. If you are, for example, 3 meters away and for 15 minutes, nothing is going to happen usually. So the application, what does is it's stores the different other Bluetooth phones that you've been near. And then in the case, if you get the COVID, you go to your application and you say, I got the COVID. But nobody knows that you are what the number that goes among the application is just your Bluetooth number. Then it sends to the other person saying, that Bluetooth number has been a person, but I am not telling you which person has get the COVID. So got COVID. So please do whatever you have to do. Stay in quarantine or go to make a PCR or whatever. This was the technology behind.
Yeah, it has been interesting, and it's curious that they have joined forces. Well, what you were saying, in the middle of a pandemic, and they had to. There had to be a pandemic in order for them to join forces, which is a little bit sad, but I think at least they did a good job.
Yeah.
So I would say, finally, this accelerated digitalization will be a great opportunity for blockchain, especially for the applications in business and public administration. Blockchain, if you don't know it, ensures the authenticity of digital documents in a way that the conventional internet network cannot. An example of its potential can be seen in the recent launch by the Chinese government of a macro blockchain platform. And so far, 128 cities in the country have joined that platform. It can be used by the administration, by companies, and finally by citizens. And it is intended for massive use, the management of public services, and the control of citizens' personal and health data, which I think it's a very good initiative. I would say, to conclude, that technology has played and is currently playing a very important role in this pandemic, and it has helped everyone move forward during these difficult times.
Very nice, very interesting. So let me ask you a question. What is your idea? You already have explained this, Jan, but Emilie, what is your idea about the blockchain technology for main use? What do you think about it?
I think that it's definitely a good idea and it's a great protocol to use, but we also have to take into account sometimes blockchain, even though it's like very flashy, sometimes it's just easier to like not use blockchain and just put more focus into privacy. Because I've read a lot of articles about people who are using similar technologies, and in the end they found that like the amount of blockchain technology they were using could be simplified or just distilled down to one or two components. So that's something to consider as well.
My point of view is a little bit more critical. You say, Jan, that Chinese government, for example, do that platform, and there are plenty of cities adopting this as their, I would say, database or for management the data. But I know plenty of projects around the world using blockchain, but I think blockchain is some kind of the typical technology fashion, and it's not gonna be something really adopted as a full technology for anything. I mean, they're trying, but at this moment, blockchain is something I would say old, because blockchain is the technology behind what? Bitcoin. So how old is Bitcoin now?
It's like 15 years.
So
I don't know.
I'm not sure.
No, maybe not so much.
Not as much, but I mean, it has to be, maybe we can take a look at the Wikipedia. It has to be more than 10, 12 years. So the point is that you can, I'm pretty sure you two can tell me at this moment any daily use of anything you are on that use blockchain, except you are on the Bitcoin stuff and you are having money on the Bitcoin chain. But I mean, it's not something that has gone mainstream, is the word. I mean, it's a technology that are people that are using it, but for example, banks take forever to adopt it blockchain because they say blockchain as a competitor instead of a helping hands. And now some of them are using it, but you cannot name too much projects. I would say main project that regular people uses on a daily basis, or even companies using blockchain, because it's not really, as Emilie very, very nice said, it's not really a technology that is fully, I would say, clear. There are plenty of dark clouds behind. I mean, the simplest point you remember is who's the originator of this technology? Who's the man behind the person or the company?
It's Emilie? Like unknown.
They use a pseudonym Satoshi, but no one actually knows who it is.
So
it is thought to be a sort of group, like not actually a person. but
Well, the problem
but
is
nobody
that
knows.
exactly, that's the question. Nobody knows if there was a person. For some time, I'll believe that was a person. At some moment, there was the creator of the Oracle database, Larry Ellison, says, "I know the guy. I'm going to say his name," and he never said his name because it was wrong. He was wrong. So the point is that if you are building blocks over a technology that is very nice and so on, that has plenty of dark stuff that, I mean, it's not so open source, I would say. We are talking about open source usually. It's not having a very good moment. I mean, it's not. I mean, I'm saying it. I mean, that's my opinion. Excuse me. Continue. Let's continue.
No, I would say that is it. Well, we have already talked a lot about it, so maybe we can listen what Emilie has to say. We have something special today. Could you please explain for a minute what are you going to talk about? What is JAMstack, Emilie? Just for a minute.
So last time we were talking about the JAMstack, which is JavaScript, APIs, and markup, and it's a technology that fuels static sites, which are becoming more and more prevalent on the web. So I created a workshop where I go into the basics of Hugo, which is quite a popular static site generator that's written in Go, and it's super fast and super easy to get set up with. So I created a workshop, and let's go into the JAMstack tutorial. Hey guys, it's Emilie, and this is the JAMstack Hugo tutorial for this episode of the GCiers Podcast. Last episode, we were talking about the JAMstack and static site generators and how they're changing the face of the web as we know it today. As a reminder, the JAMstack stands for JavaScript, APIs, and markup, and it's a stack that, in combination with CDNs, is being used to create static sites, which means that there doesn't need to be a server or a complex web application behind a simple web app. So today we're going to be getting started with Hugo, one of my favorite frameworks for building static sites. It's really fast and really easy to get started with. This guide assumes a basic knowledge of the command line and Git. As well, you should have a basic understanding of how websites work, such as HTML and Markdown. Alright, so the first step to getting started is installing Hugo itself. It's available on a variety of operating systems, so you should be able to find a distribution and a tutorial on the installation page. As some quick links, on macOS, if you have Homebrew, you can run brew install Hugo. The same if you're on Linux and have Homebrew. On Windows, you should probably use Chocolatey, so choco install Hugo -confirm. If you're on Scoop, you can use Scoop install Hugo. And on Linux, you can run sudo apt-get install Hugo on Ubuntu and Debian-based systems. And on Arch-based derivatives, you can run sudo pacman-s Hugo. If your distribution isn't listed on the site, you should probably be able to find a tarball in the GitHub releases. Alright, so the first step to actually getting a Hugo site up and running after you've installed Hugo is to check that it's actually installed. So if it's properly on your path and installed correctly, you should be able to run Hugo. However, it's obviously not going to work because Hugo actually requires a set of very specific folders and configuration to get started. So to get started, we're going to run Hugo new site, and then I'm just going to run it in the current directory. So congratulations, we've created our new Hugo site. Then we're going to be able to download a theme, but before we do that, we're actually going to have to git init. I assume that you have Git installed properly on your system and that it's working. So by initializing a Git repository, we'll be able to actually add Git submodules for our theme, which we'll be talking about later. While we're at this point, I'm also going to introduce the Hugo server command. What this does is it renders it into your local host at the port 1313 usually if you haven't configured that globally. So basically what this does is it creates a preview that you can later access in any web browser, for example. However, we don't have anything in our theme quite yet, and it's just going to be an empty 404 page. So let's get started in getting a theme. Something that's also great about Hugo is that they have a huge catalog of themes. You have themes or blogs, themes that are responsive, minimal, clean, and lots of tags. So it's really easy to get started by just cloning one of these into a Git submodule and then just adding that to your blog right away. And then you don't have to do any CSS or HTML work by yourself. Though we will be going into how to customize these pre-made themes and even build them from scratch later on. So the theme that we'll be using for our tutorial is called the Anubis Theme. It's authored by Dmitry Kolosov, and it's just a really minimal, really clean theme that has just enough capabilities for us to really illustrate what Hugo can do. So this is what the demo looks like on the website, and soon we'll have these posts replaced with your own content, so that will be really fun. So we're going to navigate into our terminal, and we're just going to add it as a submodule into our theme/Anubis folder. What this does is basically checks out this repository into the themes.anubis folder, which is where Hugo actually reads all the theme content from. So we're going to run this, and it's just going to take a while. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to edit that config.toml file. However, Anubis actually uses a YAML syntax. Toml and YAML are slightly different markup languages that are used for representing information, so we're going to move this config.toml into config.yaml. Then we can edit that file. I'm going to be using Vim because I am extremely quirky. And what we're going to do is just paste in this information. This information is available on the website that I will be creating along with you guys, which will be published at qb.sh/lg.JAMstack. So once we have this in, we're just going to write the file, and then we can start getting started with content. You can see that if we run Hugo server and navigate to the website in Chrome, which is at localhost port 1313, that there's no content here. So we're going to want to change that. So navigate back into your terminal, and then we're going to create some content in the content directory. However, you can't just create a Markdown file and expect it to work. Well, it will, but we're going to have to use something called front matter later on. So it's easier to use Hugo's new post feature. So we're going to run Hugo new post hello world.md, which will create a new Markdown file for us. Now, if we open this, we can see that there's something here already. This is called front matter. You can see that there's a title attribute, there's a date attribute, and there's a draft attribute. This is information that we'll be playing with later on, so we don't have to really worry about this yet. Let's start with some basic Markdown. If you're not familiar with Markdown, it's just a syntax language that people use to mark up plain text into rich format for rendering. So if you're not familiar with it, one hashtag is basically the equivalent of h1, 2 is the equivalent of h2 in HTML if you're familiar with that, and this goes on all the way until h6. You can write normal paragraphs, and notice that here there are two spaces. This will produce a line break, and this new line in between produces a paragraph break. We can also write lists, and we can also have ordered lists. We can write code just by indenting it with 3 backticks, and you can even have syntax highlighting. So def If you want to have inline code, you can just surrender with 1 backtick, so something like you can add images, so you're going to have to put brackets and put the alt text in between, and then have parentheses with the link to image.png. This is the same syntax that we use for normal links. So this is the text of link, and then this will be link to link. this is just some basic syntax, and if you're wanting to get more in depth with Markdown, I would highly advise you look up a Markdown cheat sheet and just learn that. It's not very complicated. So once we write this, we can still run Hugo server, and we can see that we still don't have anything. But that's how it's supposed to be, because if you notice, there's a draft attribute here. This is one example of front matter where we don't actually have a draft built because Hugo sees the draft is true and actually doesn't build it. This is something that happens in production sites where you don't want the draft of your newest article to be public quite yet. So once we change this to false, and reload, we can see that our content is now here. And if you enter this, you can see that it's nicely rendered. Of course, these images and links don't actually work because I didn't put in actual links, but if you put in real links, they'll actually render nicely. So I've gone ahead and transformed all the content from this workshop and this script for the video into Markdown format and put it into this Hugo site. So this is going to be kind of like a meta tutorial, if you will. So now when I run Hugo server, I'll generate a site kind of like this. So as you can see, you have installing Hugo, skeleton, and all this information. And we can also see that there's a post section. However, there are several things that I'd like to change about this theme. For example, I don't want the theme name to be Anubis. I would like to put like my name here, for example. And also I'd like to have this be in dark theme. So these are all things that we can configure by changing the theme itself. So let's get into how to do that. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do in order to edit our website is to edit the config.yaml file that we're doing in step 2. So the first thing we're going to change here is this title. This title is what goes at the top of the page, so Anubis, Anubis. Here we're going to change this to whatever you want, so I'm going to call it LG JAMstack. As well, the next thing we're going to do is go down here to params. The way that we can change it so that there's a dark mode and a light mode is actually to change this to auto. This will depend on what theme you use, but for Anubis, they've documented it that there's an auto style switcher. As well, we're going to add a param called author. This can be just your name, so I'm going to put MML. And then there's also a description. So that's just going to be LG JAMstack tutorial. Now if we write this file and run Hugo server, then you can see that this has changed. And as well, we have Emilie 2020 at the bottom here. We also have a theme changer. And as well, if you go read more, then it's still the same theme. Another feature of this theme that we can use is the favoriting feature. So for this to implement this feature, we're going to have to go back into the contents. So we can cd content post, and let's change, for example, the first file. So here, remember this is, here this is called the front matter. So what we're going to have to add is a favorite true. So this is going to add a special star next to our favorite blog post. This is a feature that, again, is not implemented in every theme, but it is in Anubis. So this is just going to help you get an understanding of how front matter works. And now if I exit here and run Hugo server again, then you can see that once I exit back to the main page, scroll down, there is a star next to installing Hugo, so this marks it as our favorite. So yeah, that's about it for configuring the actual theme, but for more information, let's talk about the actual folder structure. If you're interested only in what we've already done, and that's good enough for you and you don't want to customize your theme further or create a new theme, then you can just skip the next few parts. But for those of you who are interested, I'm going to go more into the detail of the folder structure of Hugo and what each folder and file does. So if I run tree, you can see that there are a lot of files. So let's start with the content. So content, the subdirectory post contains all our posts. This directly affects the URL structure. So Hugo will take content posts as localhost 1313/post/00, for example. However, if you'd like to have, for example, an about page, you can put that under content/about and not have that under content/post about. This will make it so that the about page, if directly under content, will appear as localhost 1313/about. But these posts in the content directory, you can also put HTML if you want a special layout, for example. I wouldn't advise doing that because sometimes you can mess up the actual internal structure of Hugo. So I would recommend that you instead specify a layout parameter in your front matter of your Markdown, just like we did for the favorite. So with this layout, we can reference things in our theme. So in our theme, you can see that there's one big directory for Anubis. Let's start, for example, with the static folder. The static folder contains all the CSS and the style toggles that we use. These directly affect the layouts. The layouts are what I recommend that you use if you would like to customize each layout, for example. You can see that there are a couple of folders. You have default, which contains all the default files and all the file content. So, for example, the space of contains the header, the footer, and all the things that you can put in from partials, for example. As well, we have a list, RSS, and these are basically overriding the default Hugo themes. Single refers to the content page that we see when, for example, we click into here, and then list refers to the page we see when we clicked into archive. Now you see this partials directory. This partials directory contains a list of partials, or basically short snippets of code that you can reuse in all of your HTML files. As well, we have an index.html, so if you're familiar with HTML, that's just the landing page or the first page that you usually see when you get to a site. If we scroll up, you can see images directory, and as well, you can see a couple of example sites, but those aren't built in. So the next most important directory is the archetypes. Archetypes contains a default.md file, and this controls what's generated when you run Hugo new post / whatever. So for example, if we think back to when we were running Hugo new post hello world, we saw that there was the date, there was the title, and there was the draft attribute. This is all controlled in the archetypes. You can see that there's also a static directory, but there's nothing in it. This is where you'd usually put logos and other site-specific resources. Data is also a really important part of Hugo in that you can put JSON and other data formats such as CSV and TOML and call that data directly from your post or from your layout. So if you're interested in making data-driven content, that's definitely where you should go. And finally, the config.yaml file, that's just where you configure your site. So as you can see, it's not very complicated and it's very self-explanatory, but if you'd like to get more involved with customizing a theme, I highly recommend the Hugo documentation site. This is a centralized place where they talk about Go templating, which is the formatting that Hugo uses, as well as like the curly bracket syntax. As well, they talk about partials, they provide a lot of examples for data-driven content, and it's a great place to go if you'd like to look into, for example, translations or adding images or stuff like that. So we're coming to the end of our JAMstack tutorial now, and you're probably thinking, how do I get my website on the web? So as it turns out, you can't just take all the files that you find in your file tree and just put that on the internet, because you don't have a direct HTML index.html for it to read from, and essentially it's not going to look very pretty either because the CSS isn't linked properly. So the reason we call Hugo a static site generator is because it actually generates the files for you and creates a static site from all these special files that it reads. So how do we do that? It's very simple. You just run the Hugo command, and as you can see, it's processed a bunch of pages for us. And you can see that it only took 66 milliseconds, and that's one of the really special parts about Hugo, is that it's blazing fast. So now if we run ls, we can see that there's a new public directory. This is where the actual contents of your website are. So if you go into the public tree, you can see that you have all these actual HTML pages that the web browser can actually read. So how do we get that on the web? So you can just go onto GitHub, find a repository, and then choose your files and then directly upload all of them. You can then commit and then have that all uploaded to GitHub. I'm not going to go into the details of how to update GitHub pages or Netlify, and those tutorials can be found on the Hugo page itself. I usually recommend having a repository just for the code and perhaps having an alternate branch or alternate repository for the actual generated contents of the website. As you can see, we've created a great site and we have a lot of content here in just a short period of time. You might be able to see why JAMstack and its related technologies are so appealing for developers. We can work on the code of the website and style it up ourselves without having to worry about the content, which is completely decoupled and written in an easy to understand markup language that non-technical content creators can also work with. Another thing that you might want to consider adding to your site is something like Netlify Cms. It's a CMS, which stands for Content Management System, that works with Git, so that's ideal for developers, and it adds basically a WordPress-like interface to a Hugo static site. This deployment can also be automated, and it makes just development really fast in general, which is why a lot of developers like the JAMstack. So thank you for following along with this workshop, and I hope you like the rest of the podcast.
What an amazing tutorial, Emilie. Thank you so much.
No problem.
It's been very nice. I'm going to try JAMstack. And remember, I ask you and you agree on make this tutorial because I find that this was a very interesting technology that makes that gives opportunities to people with not too much resources to make a simple and in a fast way a website. So we're gonna try it on the Liquid Galaxy community, and we will find. I'm pretty sure we will find some spots, and of course, students will use your nice tutorial, your nice workshop. So I think, Jan, this is the end. We have nothing else.
That is correct.
So remember to follow us on our website, liquidgalaxy.eu. This is the place of the community. We have our news and we have plenty of information. And also we will have we have a podcast in the menu, in the main menu. There is a podcast section, and this video will be there also. And also we will publish the JAMstack tutorial, JAMstack workshop Emilie has done in a separate way, just for having it more usable. And we will publish it on the website too, or in our social networks. Remember, we're on Twitter like _Liquid Galaxy. And I think nothing else for today. See you on the next episode of the GCiers Podcast in November. Thank you.
That is it.
So
thank you very much for listening. And I just wanted to say that we have to excuse two of our usual collaborators. Well, not that usual, but they should, and they are really looking forward to be in the next meets. So let's excuse them.
Let me do it in a fun way. Janiru from Sri Lanka, you have to be there in the next podcast. And also Merul from India, you too. And I will say the other staffers like Dylan in Los Angeles, and any other person of the GCiers community. Okay, so Emilie, anything to say?
Nope, that's it.
That's it? Okay, perfect. So let's close it. Bye-bye.